Well, for more analysis, I'm joined here on set by Suzanne Lynch, Washington Correspondent for the Irish Times. Thanks for being with us.
Thank you. Good to see you.
So, a lot to untangle. Obviously, a crushing defeat for the Prime Minister, but she did raise an interesting point that by rejecting this deal, she still wasn't sure what lawmakers actually wanted. So, what options are on the table?
You're right. I think she made a very good point there. This vote actually brings more uncertainty because we are no clearer about the path out of this impasse. Yes, there was an overwhelming majority against the deal that she has spent the last 2 years negotiating, but we're no clearer to knowing what Parliament wants and what is the best way they see as the next steps. The problem now is that there is no majority in Parliament for anything. There's no majority to leave with no deal. There's no majority for a second referendum. So that is what's, what the government there, what Theresa May is going to try and untangle in the next few days. Now, because of a previous amendment, she now has to come back with a plan B, if you like, by Monday. Obviously, we have a vote of no confidence in the government tomorrow, but that looks not as dramatic as it may sound, because it now looks at this point that she will pass that she will win that vote of no confidence in her government. A lot of the Brexiteers, the Eurosceptics in her own party, have said that they will support their Prime Minister. The DUP, the Northern Irish Party, which helps prop up her government in Westminster, have also said they will support her. So she may be out of the woods on that. But again, we are really no further on what the next steps are and whether, as some hope, that maybe her hand is strengthened and could she go back to Brussels and negotiate something else.
And let's look at Brussels. I mean, is it in the EU's best interest to try and give more concessions, renegotiate a deal, rather than let Britain crash out of the EU?
Well, I think it's in everyone's interest to have an orderly exit of Britain from the European Union, and all sides have said that. But you're right in that there are a couple of issues. It's not so straightforward just to extend Article 50, the withdrawal. For example, the European elections that were just mentioned there come up in May. How would that work if Britain were still a member of the European Union? They thought they wouldn't be at that stage. So that's one issue. But secondly, I think that the broader issue is that from the European Union side, they feel that no matter what they give Theresa May, it's not going to be enough. She has evidently lost the support of a lot of her party and of Parliament on this. So I think they feel that maybe, unless it's something dramatic, no matter what they give her, she would still not be able to get this through. So that's why the crunch point in the next few days may be that Theresa May goes back to Brussels and looks for something quite dramatic, maybe a change to the Irish backstop. That's the most controversial issue. But at this stage, it doesn't look like the European Union is prepared to give much ground on that.
Now, what about the idea of taking it back to the British people? Obviously, this idea of a second Brexit referendum has come up. What has been the sentiment in terms of how people felt about it back then when the referendum first took place versus how British people feel about it now?
Well, there has been a growing movement in the last few months for a so-called people's vote, which is a second referendum. But Theresa May herself has been against that. She has said, no, the people have voted and we have to respect that decision. And of course, the other huge variable in this is the Labour Party. We could be looking at some point at a general election and potentially a Labour government. If that was to happen, Jeremy Corbyn and the Labour Party would come under pressure from a lot of their supporters to have a second referendum. The problem is that Jeremy Corbyn, and in the last few days he's reiterated this, is essentially opposed to this. He's been quite equivocal, but we know that he's a lifelong Eurosceptic. He doesn't really want to have a second referendum. So that's complicating things. I think if we had a strong opposition that were really pro-Europe, wanted a second referendum, that would make things more clear. But that's also muddying the waters when it comes to a second referendum.
And we certainly heard Donald Tusk say there, who is going to have the courage then to actually provide a clear path? So what sort of message do you think this whole process and how it's unfolded is really sending? Yeah,
I think that was a very interesting tweet from Donald Tusk. He's a pragmatic man, the head of the European Council, and he seems to be hinting at in that tweet is the proper thing to do here is to not leave, is to maybe have a second referendum. But as we were just saying, that seems it's an option, but there doesn't seem to be a clear path towards that. But look, a lot of countries would still say they would prefer Britain to stay in the European Union. They don't want them to leave. This, after all, is the first country in the history of the European Union to decide to leave the EU. A lot of countries want them to stay. But of course, the European Union feels like they have been negotiating good faith until this point. And what more can they do? That there's nothing much more of substance that they can offer at the British side to really change things. So they want, I think, more of a message and clarity from London, which we didn't really get today, about what kind of Brexit they want and how they want to proceed.
What more can they do? Certainly the hanging question. Thank you so much for your insights. Suzanne Lynch there, Washington correspondent for the Irish Times.